I don't know when I've listened and watched something like this from a president that I found more disturbing.
Are you questioning his fitness?
Yes, I do.
That's former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper earlier this week doubting whether or not the president is up to the job following that speech and the rally in Phoenix on Tuesday night. President Trump responded yesterday, tweeting this, quote, James Clapper, who famously got caught lying to Congress, is now an authority on Donald Trump. Will he show you his beautiful letter to me? End quote. It's a reference to Clapper's congressional testimony in 2013. At the time, Clapper denied the NSA willingly collected information on millions of Americans. Documents later leaked by Ed Snowden showed otherwise. Meanwhile, about that beautiful letter the president tweeted about, Clapper says he actually wrote two of them, one to Trump and one to Hillary Clinton on behalf of the intel community. Whoever won the election would receive it. He says it was a simple congratulatory note with almost identical wording to each candidate, which Trump then thanked him for 3 times. Joining us now, former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson. Mr. Secretary, always good to have you here. Good morning.
Good morning, Willie. How are you?
I'm doing well. Do you share James Clapper's concerns about the fitness of this president for office?
Well, first, I have to revert to my old job just a little bit here. As we watch this hurricane approaching South Texas, I think it's important for those who live in that region to pay attention to what local authorities tell them to do. If they tell you to evacuate, you should evacuate. There's always somebody who stays behind. They think they can avoid it. It's not going to happen to me. It's important to follow the directions of local authorities in a situation like that.
Absolutely.
Jim Clapper's a good man and a great American, in my opinion. He was actually a political appointee in the Bush administration and a holdover into the Obama administration at the Pentagon, where I served together with him. I thought Jim was a great DNI. He made that bureaucracy work effectively. And Jim is about as apolitical as they come. And so I have high regard for his judgment and his assessments.
Do you share his assessment that this president may not be fit?
Well, no, I'm not prepared to make judgments like that. I am obviously concerned about a number of things this president has said and done, as are a number of people, Republicans and Democrats. And I hope that with the new staff, the new chief of staff, we might see some more order in the White House. John's a good friend of mine from the Pentagon, and we have a lot of issues that we need to deal with. You know, a lot of us are caught up in the politics of this. You know, it's good for ratings, but it's not very good for the welfare of the country. And so,
well, the politics and your line about ratings is we're covering the Russia investigation, which I think you would agree is worthy of coverage, and we're covering Charlottesville, which I assume you think is worthy of coverage as well. So these are problems of the making of the president, not created out of thin air. Would you agree with that?
A lot of it stems from things he has said. Correct. Charlottesville was a real tragedy. Charlottesville was an alarming situation, and in that type of situation, we depend upon our president to bring us together, to lower the temperature, not raise the temperature. And so I hope that this president has the ability to learn from episodes like that, or at least call upon people for advice about how to deal with complicated situations like Charlottesville.
Secretary, for former officials like yourself or Clapper and others, if you in fact have, if former officials have concerns about the fitness of the president, what's their obligation? What should they feel they are obliged as patriots to do, if anything?
I think people should make their views known, Republicans and Democrats. And those of us who've been in national security, those of us who've been in the Situation Room, those who are familiar with governing, with the presidency, I do believe have an obligation, if we see something going in the wrong direction, to inform Americans about what we know, what we see, what our own experience tells us are the warning spots and the trouble signs. Absolutely.
Mark, how safe is the homeland now under this administration?
Well, first thing that comes to mind when I think about that is Barcelona. Barcelona was a coordinated attack. It was planned. A lot of deliberation apparently went into it. The leader of that plot, blew himself up, but 14 people were killed, and it looks as though it was a plan to attack several locations. And we watch this, and we have to remember that the vehicle, the car, is becoming the weapon of choice for a lot of terrorist organizations. And we also have to remember, though there has not been such an attack in the United States for a while, we should not become complacent in this country. There's no reason to believe that ISIS-directed or ISIS-inspired attacks have receded or gone away. And so we should not, in this country, in this homeland, become complacent. There's still a role for public awareness, public vigilance, and there's very definitely a role for law enforcement and homeland security in this environment.
We had on the show earlier this morning a young African-American woman who was writing about President Obama in an op-ed piece where she expressed her desire to see him be speaking out more forcefully, more actively on the situation as it's unfolding in the Trump administration. I'm curious, you obviously are now out in public. You're coming on shows like this and having a public voice. What do you say to that columnist, and what's your general view about your former boss, President Obama, and what kind of role he should have as an ex-president specifically in terms of talking about President Trump and the current administration?
I think, consistent with history, consistent with past practice, presidents are entitled to recede from the stage and, give their successor some space. And that certainly was the approach of George W. Bush before President Obama. And I'm sure President Obama feels very strongly about the issues. He has chosen to lend his voice from time to time since January 20, and I believe he will continue to do so. But former presidents occupy, I think, a unique role, and I'm sure that there are things that President Obama will want to pursue on the national stage, on the world stage, that are important to him. And he should therefore be careful and selective about when he chooses to inject himself into our politics and into our national conversation. I totally respect that and agree with it.
The argument from Caroline, the columnist we had on earlier, who's a big supporter of President Obama, and that's hence why she wants him back on the stage, is that this time is different. I cited the George W. Bush example to her, that he said, I know how tough the job is. It doesn't do anybody any good for me to come in and criticize a sitting president. Do you feel like this time is different?
Well, yes, and there is no shortage of critics already.
But his voice would be more powerful than any of those.
Well, any former president's voice, someone who actually occupied the chair, someone actually who occupied the office, has a role. But I'm quite sure that President Obama feels that as a former president, he should be selective when he decides to inject himself into the conversation, as have his predecessors. So I totally understand that.
All right. Former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson, great to have you on this morning, especially with what's happening, as you mentioned, at the top down off the coast of Texas. Thanks for being here.